From the Middle is a founding member of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Oh, for the love.
Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, From the Middle proudly brings to you one of the most average podcasts in the world. Three middle-class guys living in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. Episode number 106. Thank you for joining us. It is good to be back with you after what feels like a couple weeks. Even though it's been like a week and a half for us, it's going to be great for us to catch up in this week's episode. If you're just joining us for the first time, we're a comedy, culture, entertainment, and interview style podcast. We had the Super Media Bros on last week from the Odd Pods Media Network. They were great. Now it's just the three of us hanging out, talking about whatever is top of mind. It feels like the beginning of summer and vacations and kids being off of school and pools being non-leaky. And so we are excited to catch up with one another. It is good to see my brother Dylan and our dear friend Kendall. Before we get started, Dylan, I just have to say you absolutely crushed it. The guest spot that you had on the podcast called Internet's Breadth, you did a wonderful job and we're very proud of you. So well done. How was that experience?
It was a ton of fun. It's like the second guest spot I've done, and both of them were kind of interview style podcasts. Interestingly, I did a spot on Strangers No More and then Internet's Breadth. And the host was John, was great. Jonathan was very kind. We were chatting after we recorded. Turns out he's 18 and he's very comfortable on a microphone for being 18 years old as a host. And so it was great. It was a ton of fun. You can check that out. Anchor.fm/internets with an S at the end, Breadth, BREADTH, if I spelled that right. So go check that out. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was episode 5. You did a terrific job. Tonally, it was a little more serious than what we do here on From the Middle, but I just found myself being like, that's my brother.
Well, and it felt exactly the same way when you were on Famous When I'm Dead, right? So you got interviewed, much more of a professional podcast as far as the whole art career background. But I felt the same way. You did an excellent job on that. Famous When I'm Dead. Did I say that?
Yeah.
You did an excellent job there. But I think it's fun. It feels like there's a lot less pressure guesting on some of these than there is hosting. It's nice to just be able to ask questions and interact. And I feel like as a host of a podcast, the couple times I've done this, I find myself saying, so is there anything I shouldn't cover? You really want me to talk about? Is there any notes? You find yourself sort of playing host, but going in as a guest even.
I'm sorry. Is this good? Is this good for you?
Yeah,
which they have to appreciate, right? Because you have the context of knowing what it's like, and you want to be generous in your answers, and then sort of like as you wind down your answer, segue it into another natural question. So they have to appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into it. But I cannot believe that the host Jonathan is only 18.
I know.
Oh my God.
Good night.
Yeah. It's incredible. And then we all recently were guests on another podcast. So we've all been doing the guest thing in the last month or so, which has been a ton of fun. So thank you. Yeah, I think we shared that out on our Facebook page, on all of our social media platforms. You can find our link account out to a bunch of other pages. So no matter where you are, you can find the post for that. I think on Instagram and Facebook, we probably push that episode out. So check it out if you find yourself enjoying the more serious side of Dylan, the more shaken, not stirred side of Dylan, as opposed to the chocolate milk and Funyuns side.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're happy to dumb things right back down and catch up. How are you guys doing? Like I said, it feels like it's been a few weeks only, even though it's been a couple.
All right, all right. I was telling you guys, like I'm in a situation right now where I might be sick, but I don't know. Sick enough that like I'm canceling things because I feel like that's the one thing that I hope the whole world takes away from COVID is we need to get rid of this whole bravado. I'm going to go out and do my thing and work and send my kids to school and everything, even though sick is happening. And I thought that was stupid before COVID, and I still think it's stupid. And I'm hoping that a lot of people also see that it's stupid. And so this is your public service announcement. If you think that telling me that you're sick and going to work anyway is some kind of noble statement for you to make, that's not the way I think about you. So
Yeah. Very wise, very wise. If you've been bitten by a zombie and you feel fine, don't go into a large group of people.
lock yourself up in a prison cell.
Yep.
Radioactive spiders, any kind of vampires, if there's snot uncontrollably coming out of your orifices, just maybe stay home.
Is your head spinning around 360 degrees? Can you crawl down a flight of stairs upside down and backwards? Stay the F home. Anyway, well, it's probably good that we ended up doing the Zoom thing tonight instead of in studio, Kendall, for that reason.
Indeed.
Yeah. I wouldn't want any of your snotty soda refrigerator drinks that I like to steal tonight. That should have come out much more smooth than it didn't. Kendall's so kind, he lets me steal his drinks out of his fridge, and then I get to insult him.
Dylan's so unassuming that he brings drinks to replace them with, which is ridiculous.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. You asked how we're doing. Good. I've been very excited. Since we've recorded, I've been able to watch like significantly more things than I normally do. And I've had so much fun. Normally it's like the one or two Marvel shows, like the one episode comes out on Friday and then maybe something else. And that's what I've watched. But I've got like a list, like started watching Halston on Netflix, The Liberator on Netflix, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, Raya and the Last Dragon, Parasite, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 2019. Have you guys heard about MODOK on Hulu?
No.
Anything Marvel's MODOK?
I know of the character, but I don't know of the show.
Imagine Deadpool meeting Celebrity Deathmatch. That's essentially for anyone old enough to enjoy this podcast. You're old enough to remember Celebrity Deathmatch, and that is the best way to describe MODOK. So it's on Hulu. If anyone's interested, we knew when Disney bought Hulu, they said they're going to put their more adult-oriented shows on Hulu. Well, I could certainly see that going side by side with Deadpool for the more Adult Swim type viewers. So do not let your kids or teenagers watch MODOK on Hulu. But if you want to see something completely over the top, Patton Oswalt plays MODOK.
Oh gosh.
Crazy. Also, I can't think of his name, the actor that's in Parks and Rec. He's the worst. He plays MODOK's son. And then Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she plays the daughter. It's such a good voice cast, even though it's all like claymation or whatever it is. It's ridiculous. So anyways, I've been watching so much stuff. And I'm happy to talk about any of those individually, but that's where I've been.
Well, I have a couple that I'm interested in. I don't even know what Halston is, or The Liberator. But we did talk a lot about Sonic in an earlier episode, and it's, what did you think of that? Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik.
Have either of you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay, you have. For having no expectations going into Sonic, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like it was genuinely just a fun movie. Jim Carrey was exactly like you expect Jim Carrey to be. He's got these flashes of like The Mask and Cable Guy, and you get like these little bits and pieces of him in other roles. And I'm glad they're making another one. It's exactly the kind of silly, fun popcorn movie I thought the animation was great. They did a good job making Sonic look like Sonic, which we talked about a long time ago.
Episode 37, if you're interested in going back and hearing
Wow,
us
that
talk
would
about that.
deep dive that one. Yeah, it was good, man. It was a really good, like silly. I laughed out loud 5 or 6 times watching along, and again went in with no expectations.
And what about Raya and the Last Dragon? I enjoyed that one. I was excited to hear what your thoughts on that one were. Aquafina, I think, did great.
Yeah, if I'm excited. That was one of the reasons I was excited for Raya and the Last Dragon, because I'm limited with what I've seen her in. I think she's got a show on Hulu or Netflix right now, but she was, if you've not seen Crazy Rich Asians, definitely see Crazy Rich Asians. It's fantastic. It's a rom-com, but it's fantastic. She's in that, and then something else. She's going to be in Shang-Chi. I'm excited to see her in Shang-Chi, the new Marvel movie in September.
And she was in the second Jumanji.
I didn't see the Jumanji reboots, but okay. So
She was great in that also.
I knew she was going to be silly. Yeah, that one, the little kid in Raya and the Last Dragon who has the shrimp cooking boat and Aquafina's role. I didn't love it, but I thought it was really sweet. So I'm excited. I think that'll be one that my daughter will like when she's a little bit older, to get to see like her as the dragon flying around, and then the little kid, and then the little baby with the little monkeys, those little characters that are running around all over the place. I thought it was sweet.
That's awesome.
What about you, Corey? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I kind of want to pick up on the media train. So a couple of weeks ago now, I had a light work day, and I went to the theater by myself in the middle of a weekday. And we had our friend Greg Dillow on the show in episode 103 to talk about Godzilla versus King Kong, or Kong versus Godzilla. And I watched that in the theater. I almost had the whole theater to myself. And you guys, I almost cried. I just so miss the movies. The smell of the popcorn and the big foyer atrium area, and then finding your theater, and then picking out your seat and the reclining seats. And then Marvel had this really cool, we shared it on our Facebook page. Marvel had this really cool montage of pretty much the entire MCU. And it was like a welcome to the movies was kind of the theme. And it was Stan Lee's voice that started it. And they just show you clips of different films from the MCU to lead up to all the films that are coming out. Dylan just mentioned one of them. Shun-Chi, whatever it's going to be called. What is it?
Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Shoom Tree, I think.
It was just like this slow, melodic Stan Lee's voiceover, clips from the MCU and the storytelling. And it's like, welcome back to the movies, or whatever the subtitle was. And I was just like, this is so beautiful. And the movie hadn't even started. I didn't care what the movie was. It was just so good to be back in the theater. And that was a pretty cool experience that I wanted to share, because I knew our listeners would appreciate that. Yeah, so that was good. I think I texted you guys a picture of that. And then we just got back from vacation. We were on Lake Norris in Tennessee with extended family. We had a this is the same lake that I went on before when I talked about the floating house. Only this year we didn't do the floating house. Our mom, as a Christmas gift, got us a huge VRBO. The house slept like 28 people, and we had 16 members of our extended family there. My uncle brought his pontoon boat. My mom and stepdad bought jet skis just for the bought them, didn't rent them, bought them to be used over and over. So we had jet skis, and there was fishing, and we had a few rain days. And so picking up again on the movies and entertainment, I picked up an old movie from 1998 that I had never seen, Waking Ned Devine. Do you guys know Waking Ned Devine?
I've seen bits and pieces. I've never watched it though.
Same. I had only seen bits and pieces. It's a hilarious story. I won't go into the thing, but check it out. Hilarious premise. It's just a goofy, good time film. And then we watched when we got back from vacation. I realized that Alone season 8 started. This is one of my favorite shows. I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. 10 people surviving in the wilderness simultaneously. Last man standing wins. You only get to pick 10 items. Nobody knows when everybody else taps out. It's on the History Channel. So good. So we're 2 episodes into that show, and then watched the documentary on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier called Assembled. It's the behind the scenes. That was terrific. They gave the whole backstory of how that show came together, and all the challenges that they faced with the global pandemic, and then, trying to get everybody together again. They had already shot a ton of stuff in one location, but then the world closed down, and then what do we do? And just a lot of really interesting insights into what went into that show. And I think I appreciate behind the scenes so much because it just makes me when they can tell the full story about the amount of thought and intention that goes into something that we just consume as entertainment. You're like, whoa, like the things that I'm picking up on were intended to be in there, or I didn't even see that layer, or I didn't even consider that challenge that they faced. One of the interesting things that one of the, I think, producers or writers was talking about was, if you look at sort of like buddy cop movies or buddy cop shows, they range in seriousness from like Heat to Rush Hour, right? And there's like this sliding spectrum of serious and tomfoolery, and where they wanted this show to sit between Bucky and the Falcon. And so that was just really cool to watch. So yeah, it's just work has slowed down to a more tolerable pace, and so I've gotten to catch up on a few things myself. So it's been good.
Good. Go ahead, Dylan.
I was just going to say, the thing I love about when you said you love all the behind the scenes and the thought that goes into it, it sort of it sort of illuminates the silliness of all those knee-jerk reaction internet comments like, oh, it sucked. This was stupid that they did this. And then you get to hear the people that created the thing go into a 5-minute explanation just in the documentary as to why they did what they did, which was probably really some executives and 5 writers in a room for 6 hours or 6 days or 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And they boil it down to explaining why they did what they did in 5 minutes on a documentary, and how everyone thinks they've got better ideas for how things go. And that doesn't mean that the people that create this stuff are always right, but you certainly get a lot more of an idea of, this is why we did what we did. This was the reason that we went this direction. And it kind of helps to me. It speaks to what we've said about, as much as Star Wars fans want to complain, you have to assume that pretty much everyone that works for Lucasfilm to be able to get to that level is like diehard fan or a huge fan. And I would feel the same way about Marvel. Most of these people have to be pretty darn big fans to want to take on these projects, across Disney Plus or the MCU or whatever. Yeah. Not all of them, I'm sure, but not some of the directors bounce in and out of the MCU or whatever. But it certainly speaks to how much thought they put into it, which I love.
And to piggyback on that, we already did a deep dive to one of our way back episodes. I'll go back even further to episodes 9 and 10, where we talked about the creative process. And that's something that I think sometimes I don't even do a good job explaining to my customers and clients. Like, almost nothing I do in the creative or design process is arbitrary. I'm not just randomly putting stuff in there or just trying a color or a font or a symbol or a combination of any of those elements when designing a brand or whatever. And the same is true for these shows. When you can hear the person explain the thought process behind the rationale and the why behind, I made this decision because what we were trying to do was bridge the Marvel Cinematic Universe with a television version, and we wanted to fill in these gaps, and there was these things going on in the country, so we wanted to handle racial issues, and we wanted to do this. And you hear that and you're like, oh, okay. So I think you make an excellent point, Dylan, is there's that knee-jerk reaction of like, well, if I was king for a day and I had a preference on how I consumed these things, I would much prefer XYZ. And it's like, fine, but you're one person with your point of view and your perspective, but when you're considering that they're trying to serve hashtag fan service a much larger audience with a much broader experience, and the intention of the show might not be the same as what you think it is, then you just learn to sort of trust the process and go with what Kendall has said multiple times before, which is you could pick and choose whatever you want, but the reality is that this is what it was. So this was the last Star Wars film. You can be excited about that or not, but it is what it was.
Yeah, and like I said, it's okay to like turn around and walk away from it. Like that's acceptable. Like it's acceptable to be like, I don't like the direction Marvel has gone. I no longer consider myself a Marvel fan. I would rather hear you say that.
Right. But I've never watched a behind the scenes of anything ever and appreciated the show or the movie less. It always adds value to the story that was told, which tells me that if you just give people a little time, and if you just listen, and if you just appreciate the art that was created, you often can settle down a little bit and get off of your high horse and just enjoy the thing that was created.
Exactly.
And were you entertained? Great.
I think that that's true about all art forms, especially when like you hear some abstract lyrics and you're listening to Simon and Garfunkel and some of the off the wall kind of what do they mean kind of lyrics, and or you're looking at abstract paintings and sculptures and things, and there is this idea out there that I subscribe to, which is it means whatever you glean from it. And meaning is owned by the viewer, and that's all well and good, but we all still, like, there's a piece of us that is more satisfied when we find out what was the painter thinking when they painted it. Like I know what I got from it. I want to know what they were doing. And so, yeah, a behind the scenes thing, like even if you think that it was something else, or even if you got something that they didn't mention on their special, there's still something satisfying about knowing.
That's such a good point. We've used the term retconned before, which is fans have theories and there's coincidental meanings or layers of meaning that the creators, after the fact, without that being the plan, go, yeah, I like that. That sounds good. It's official. It's canon, right? I wonder how many times that's happened. Like if a philosopher sat down with the Eagles and explained, here's what I think you meant by the lyrics from Hotel California, and gave this really long, beautiful dissertation of how the lyrics of Hotel California mean X. And they all go, no, we were just in Joshua Tree, high as kites. And that's what came out. Like, that should also be okay.
Right.
Because it is what it is.
I have to go back real quick though. I have to throw in a little plug. I've talked about how much I love the series Band of Brothers. That's come up a few times on the podcast. I mentioned The Liberator, which is a 4-episode series, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast. It's like cell shaded. I think I mentioned it before I had watched it. It seems like they started to film it, and then COVID happened, and then they just cell shaded over top of what they had and just did animation for like the background and the tanks and whatever. I don't know. It feels like it was supposed to be a live action series, and then they pivoted. Maybe it was like Blacklist. Kendall's mentioned before, they did the last season in animation. Maybe they had recorded part of it and then they just pivoted.
Interesting.
Anyways, if you're a Band of Brothers series, I'm not going to say it's the same caliber of like writing, but it's very good. It's very good. If you love that series, check out The Liberator. It's only 4 parts. I think they're all 45 minutes to an hour or something like that. But interestingly, this covers soldiers going up through Italy, Battle of Anzio, but it's a platoon of soldiers from Oklahoma that has a mixture of basically Caucasian cowboys, Native Americans, and Mexicans, and this obviously takes place during World War II. So not exactly the the world that we live in now when it comes to social climate and culture and
wokeness.
wokeness and acceptance of minorities and whatever. So you can imagine there's a little bit of conflict around that platoon being mixture. And we've seen similar things with African Americans and Tuskegee Airmen. I think Peter Jackson made a movie, Red Tails, and they covered some of that stuff from the African American perspective. But it is interesting because it covers some of those troops. So if you like Band of Brothers, if you love Band of Brothers, check out Liberator. If you like it, you might not like Liberator, but if you love Band of Brothers, go watch that 4-parter. It's really good. So I had a little plug there for the Liberator.
Kendall, how about you, buddy? We just talked about a crap ton of stuff we've been watching. You don't have to say what you've been watching, but how's life? What's going on?
Well, so I mean, it's no secret. I don't watch like the sheer amount of things that you guys do.
Okay. Well,
as far as streaming on Netflix and that kind of thing, I watch a lot of YouTube. And I'm fairly confident I'm watching way more YouTube than probably both of you combined. So that's where a lot of my time goes. And I will tell you that at the risk of sounding like a basic white chick, I found a true crime YouTube channel that I'm all about. It's called JCS Criminal Psychology.
Yeah.
Is the name of the channel. And this guy, he puts a ton of work into each and every one of these episodes. Some of them are a couple hours long. And he chooses these cases, high profile cases, most of them, or there's something interesting about them. But what he finds like the interrogation videos and the police interview videos and those kinds of things. And he goes through step by step, real time as you're watching. He'll pause and narrate kind of like the techniques that the investigators are using. He's explaining the psychological concepts that are recognizable in the subjects. Fascinating stuff. So, but yeah, so I mean, you can see his latest episode. He has the dude from the Parkland shooting, and there and did a very thorough, in depth psychological look into the interrogation videos that were available publicly about that. And then you also can see in there one of the recent ones was Casey Anthony, and then a whole bunch that like I've never heard of, but I still find absolutely fascinating, because it's not just like a whodunit telling that kind of story, but it's very much closing in on the psyche and the brain of criminals and techniques and things that investigators and police officers do to try to get them to admit things. And so
it's funny.
It's easy to deep dive that.
Yeah, that most recent video, the one from 2 weeks ago, was recommended to me on YouTube. I'm not even going to mention his name, but the Parkland school shooter. And it made me go, oh yeah, what's up with that? And that trial has been hung up for a long time. It could have all been over and done with. Some of the articles I was reading said that it could have all been over and done with, but because they're going for the death penalty, that requires different levels of things to happen. And so everything's just been kind of hung up because of COVID and whatever else. But yeah, that sounds fascinating. That last video has 37 million views, and it was posted 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Kendall, have you ever watched anything like that before?
No. I mean, I've watched like fictional stuff like Criminal Minds and things, but
yeah. Never. Have you done any like true crime podcasts or anything like that?
No, I've never been into the true crime world. This is my my dipping my toe into it.
it's obviously it's an incredibly shouldn't say obviously not everyone knows it's an podcasting in the true crime genre is massive. Like
Oh my goodness.
it's one of the biggest draws, I think, outside of maybe just I'm going to call celebrity podcasts their own genre because frankly they are. Like there's the celebrity podcasts which are massively popular, and then there's true crime, and then it feels like there's kind of everything else. So it's not shocking that a really well done YouTube series and YouTube channel around true crime would be good. Have you looked to even see if it's listenable as a podcast, or do you really have to watch it?
I don't even know. I've not. My guess is you have to watch it. I think
Okay.
it's a YouTube only thing.
I mean,
But
having watched it on YouTube, is there a lot of valuable like video elements?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
So it's something
Because
you
you're watching this interrogation, and he's referencing body movements and things like that while you're watching. So
there you go. If anyone's listening wants to check it out, don't even try to find a podcast. Just go to YouTube and check it out as a series. That's fascinating. I've never really dabbled in any of the true crime stuff. I know how crazy popular it is. I've listened to bits and pieces of podcasts, but I've never really, even a lot of the true crime, like the shows. It always reminds me of like Unsolved Mysteries, and it's kind of the cheesy older version of that. Although I think that show is back now.
Mhm.
It always reminds me of that kind of stuff. But this is a little more of a practical psychological breakdown, though, is what you're describing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, to your point, Dylan, if you ask somebody for a podcast recommendation, not true crime podcast, you just say podcast recommendation. One of the first ones that people recommend is Serial or like S-Town, which are some of the most famous true crime podcasts on the planet. And they're just super addictive, and it's a story, and you want to know what's happening, and it's like, you binge a podcast because you want to know what happens. But yeah, I'll have to check that out, Kendall. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, you generally get two recommendations. You get a celebrity podcast or a true crime, tend to be the first. There's some exceptions. There's like This American Life sometimes gets thrown in there. You might get like a history podcast. There's some comedy podcasts that come up here and there, but yeah, those two categories are massive. So
usually third on your list is From the Mid Pod, and then after that some others. Mark Maron.
I mean, the top comedy recommendation should be From the Middle,
right?
Or Culture, but
Indeed. Well, we'll talk more. We will. We're going to, but we're gonna wait until we hear from one of our friends from the Odd Pods Media Network.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Man, I love those guys.
Did I tell you guys that my son was blind for a day?
What?
I have a son, and he was blind for a day. Self-imposed blindness. So it didn't. All right. So my young boy, 5 years old, he had eye surgery about a week ago, and I had the same surgery when I was 5. It's like a lazy eye thing. It would like you go in, it takes an hour to fix it, and most of the time is spent getting into and then coming out of anesthesia, I think. But they left in the morning to do that. They were home by lunchtime. But I say this, it was sad, but there were also humorous moments at the same time. So what I think happened is when he woke up from anesthesia, I think the first thing that he felt was like that stinging eye thing, like he like something scratches like the lens of your eye, like that kind of sting. I think he went to open his eyes out of anesthesia and felt that. And then he immediately shut his eyes and refused to open them again because he was now hurting and afraid to open his eyes because it's going to hurt. And
Poor guy.
Indeed. But he was like, he was crying, and he was crying blood, which my wife was there recounting that to me, which sounds horrifying, and it is, but apparently that's perfectly normal. But my wife freaked out. You would think that they would tell the parents, hey, he's going to cry blood, but they didn't think to tell her that. So she went out of the room, was like, hey, he's crying blood. And they're like, yeah, that happens. Didn't you know? So he's wearing sunglasses. Not because I think they're all that helpful, but just because maybe it would help him. Maybe it would be a comfort mechanism for him to open his eyes, but he still wouldn't open his eyes. And so now my wife is walking through Children's Hospital with a 5-year-old boy wearing sunglasses, like bumping into things if she's not leading him properly. So it looks like that she's learning how to handle a blind kid. And she walks him into a store, a gift shop, to try to get something for him. This was a ploy in part from her to get him to open his eyes. So she stood him in front of the stuffy wall. He loves stuffed animals. It was like, you can pick something up, but you have to look at them to tell me which one you want.
Yeah.
And the kid does not like dinosaurs. He's never been into dinosaurs. I've even tried it a couple times to get him into dinosaurs. But like the dinosaurs were right at eye level, and he just like opens his eyes just to peek and then slams them shut. I want the dinosaur.
Smart kid.
So he got a dinosaur. and then I'm picking them up from the hospital. I didn't know that he hasn't opened his eyes yet. And they're sitting on a park bench, and he's just like head forward. You could tell he's not focusing on anything. He looks like a blind person with his sunglasses on, sitting there on the bench. And then his mother getting up and like leading him by hand to the car. She had to pick him up, put him in the car, and buckle him in. And then we drive home. And when we get to the neighborhood, he's zonked out in the back seat. His brother and sister are back there. They're also pretty tired, but they're fine. And we need to pick up some signs from a neighborhood garage sale. So we need to drive around the neighborhood and get these signs. And I was just like, well, I mean, he's fine. There's no reason to rush him home. He's sleeping. Let's just drive around. It'll be easier with the two of us here to get the signs. And so we're doing that. At the very last sign, Amy gets out of the passenger seat, shuts her door. The car is stopped. Joel thinks we're home. Still won't open his eyes. And so he unbuckles and stands up. And I didn't know this. I'm about to drive away when his brother is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Joel's not buckled. And I look back, and he's just like standing there, like waiting for somebody to pick him up to take him out of the car.
Oh.
So, and then he opened his eyes for maybe a grand total of 5 minutes the entire rest of the day.
Oh man.
But so he had self-imposed blindness for that day, which was interesting.
But he's doing okay now.
He's doing great now. He was doing great the next day.
Now that I know he's doing well, I have to say, I was hoping there was going to be a little stuffed parakeet. And you could just say, just hold it in your hand, buddy, and rub its head and say, pretty bird.
I can tell we got that new bird to surprise you. I came home today.
A little stuffed parakeet. You call him Petey, and you just rub his head.
Petey doesn't have a head.
So I have to ask, because I totally empathize with this story.
Yeah.
What was happening, or what led you to believe that you needed to go get his eye checked out? Did you notice a lazy eye?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could, or I thought it was pretty not that noticeable, but my wife noticed it. My mother-in-law noticed it for sure. Just like when he's looking at you talking, he's got an eye that's not tracking with you.
So our oldest, Sherry and I's oldest, Lily, when she was 3 years old. I'll never forget this moment. She's in the living room at our apartment in New Albany watching Kailan, the little Chinese girl cartoon show.
Mhm.
And she just starts crying, but she's still looking at the TV. We're sitting behind her. And she turns around and goes, I can't get it to go back. And one eye is like facing her nose, and the other one is straight.
Oh man.
We hadn't noticed any lazy eye, any drifting, anything at all up until this point. So for us, it was like a night and day thing.
Yeah.
After the fact, we had family members say, you didn't notice anything? Like from some photos of her going back to her younger days, 1, 2, 3, it's kind of turning in a little bit, but not like crazy. But this specific day, it went straight in and she couldn't get it to go back. So she had the same procedure. If I understand correctly, the tendons are actually too tight and they have to like snip them.
They snip away at muscles on the
on the sides.
On the sides. They do it to both sides because they have to make sure things are symmetrical.
Yeah. So she got bifocals after that and everything's been fine since because the eye will eventually strengthen itself. But when it's your first child, you've not noticed anything for 3 years.
Yeah.
And one day she starts crying while one eye is going completely in. You're like, she's broken.
That's a big day. Yeah. Good night.
Man, it scared us so much. But she had the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Did she get a dinosaur?
No dinosaur for her. We gave her a decapitated bird. Speaking of birds, do you have any updates about that bird
about that situation? Yeah, so the bird orphanage, we went to the bird orphanage as a whole family.
Hey.
Yeah. So we heard back, we went there. We met Mimi is the bird's name. And I mean, she's a beautiful little macaw, rainbow in colors. And she knows a good handful of words. She wouldn't come out of her cage. She's about 7 years old, which is very young for a large bird. No, she's great. She's being treated for, I don't know exactly what she's being treated for, but she's on antibiotics. And so we can't foster her just yet, but that is the plan. And so she's going to continue her antibiotic treatment. And then once the vet clears everything, then Amy apparently needs to go do another meet and greet. I don't know why.
These people don't mess around.
They're very serious. There's got to be 100 birds in that place, and they're like in their house, and 100, and that's a lot. Of, like, realize that like birds are relatively small animals, but large birds require large cages. It's a lot of birds, and it's a very loud environment. But my wife is going to go back, do another meet and greet after the antibiotics are done, and then the plan is to foster the bird for a couple months and then make a decision.
So you're next on the Mimi list.
We're on the Mimi list. We're the chosen people.
You're post antibiotic treatment.
Right.
All right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if at the next meet and greet they say something like, look, after what happened to our parakeet Petey, we've got to be careful. We can't have more incidents like heads falling off. You know what I mean? So we just got to be cautious.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Yeah. Speaking of being cautious, I have a brief. I talked about things that I recommend in shows that I watched and movies in a lot of different genres. Here's something I don't recommend. Haven't had Pizza Hut in a very long time.
Good.
One of the things that I like about Pizza Hut, though, is the stuffed crust. It's kind of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
So I got like a super meaty stuffed crust pizza, ate a bunch of it, super excited, then kind of decided on a whim to go out and do all the yard work. Not thinking about how much cheese and meat and bread that I had just consumed. So just as a cautionary tale for anyone, maybe before you go out on the hottest days of the year and do more yard work than you've done all season so far, just think about the meal that you consume before you do that. On an unrelated note, for any Band of Brothers fans, as I mentioned, does anybody remember the scene where David Schwimmer's character, Lieutenant Sobel, tells all the guys that they're going to have the weekend off, and he loads them up with a bunch of spaghetti and bread, and then he tells them weekend pass is revoked, and then they have to run up the mountain as part of basic training, and they're puking everywhere, and it's really gross. That was just a really interesting scene because it's hot, and they had eaten a lot, and it was really gross. So just a good part of the show in the first couple episodes that I like, but I didn't want to pass that along. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. It's kind of like if you're watching on YouTube, we've got a Will Ferrell meme. Milk was a bad choice.
Yeah.
And so the same is true when you're talking about heavy amounts of cheese and meat and bread.
Yeah. So does mozzarella cheese remain stringy? But never mind.
Anyways, that's my cautionary tale.
Well, thanks for the heads up on that. Yeah,
It was delicious.
I've been disappointed with Pizza Hut lately for anything that isn't the extra cheese, mushroom, stuffed crust pizza that I too enjoy. I've tried their wings. The Pizza Hut Wing Street wings, not good.
The whole world has
you can
noticed
really
that,
only get two things there. The breadsticks, depending on the location, and just like a normal pizza, they're normal, like stuffed crust or a normal pizza. The wings, if they do salads, if they do anything else,
the cinnamon bread is good. It's a cinnamon sugar on the dough, and then they have this icing that's like the toaster strudel icing that they drizzle on top. That's good.
Yeah.
But how do you mess that up?
Yeah. And they're good at breadsticks generally, whether it's the cinnamon or the cheese or the garlic or whatever. I also find, much like most fast food, it's highly dependent on location. One of the Columbus burbs I lived in had a terrible Pizza Hut, and when we lived in Louisville, that Pizza Hut was like slamming every time. It was perfect. It was hot. Everything was fantastic that we had there. And so it really feels like it's super dependent on location. Fortunately, the one near us where we live now is pretty darn good. So most of the time, you like, especially if you get a deal, you're, some kind of coupon or whatever, it's legit. So hopefully more of them can turn out like the one near us.
Yeah. I feel like the only reason I feel like people get Pizza Hut isn't because they prefer it, but because it's so dang cheap. And they'll offer you like, here's 2 boxes stuffed with food for $3.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't try that? But man, yeah. So I'm glad to hear that there's better experiences out there. The last 2 local Pizza Huts that I've been involved with have both let me down tremendously.
I used to live in
the stuffed crust. I maintain. Okay, well, that Pizza Hut, like 2 years ago, I think, went out of business. It's gone.
Okay,
so I don't have one anymore.
Yeah,
but the stuffed crust has been consistently, legitimately good, but has been like the only option for me.
Yep, it's the only thing I want from there. Is literally because there's so many other better pizza options, but like nobody sells stuffed crust. It's like a thing only Pizza Hut wants to do.
Yeah, but sometimes I'll try something else because I'll think to myself, when I was a kid, a deep dish pizza from Pizza Hut that was served in a pan that I was not allowed to touch because if I did, the place would set on fire. Was the best, and it's like. I think a lot of people agree with me on that. Like, I don't think it's just me growing up and maturing because that never happened. I think that it's gotten way worse.
We had arcade games. You had pitchers of soda. You had searing hot pans delivered to your table. You had
Yeah,
buffet,
red greasy cups.
yeah, you had buffet lines full of salad toppings and puddings and jellos and stuff that you could get all kinds of like delicious desserts with your pizza.
You had the
we
book it
were living
program.
like kings. We were living like kings for a brief time.
We were.
And now the only thing, and I miss the big New Yorker that they used to sell. That one was good too. But the only thing now that's left is I can go to them when I really want stuffed crust pizza, and I can enjoy it, and then I'm good for a long time.
Yeah.
I saw this the other day and cracked up. If you're on YouTube, it says, "Are you sit down at Pizza Hut years old?" And then there's 4 photos, the iconic stained glass looking lampshades that were above each table,
Yeah.
solar shades, the buffet with the please wait to be seated font, and then the arcade game.
Yeah, the tabletop Miss Pac-Man.
No, they need to get rid of the solar shades, and they need to put a table full of red cups with a red pitcher
Heck yeah,
Yeah.
bro.
on them, and the Parmesan and the red pepper shakers at the table, because those are iconic.
You know what I just realized?
What's
that
that,
for
bro?
this podcast for us, pizza has become the new Sebastian Maniscalco.
I think so.
I haven't watched Sebastian in a while. I haven't. I was on that podcast every week, and I've slowed down on that. Have you guys noticed like a general? So here's what happened. So Sherry and I bought out the lease of one of our vehicles tonight. So we ran over to the dealership to sign paperwork and ended up having an impromptu date night at one of our favorite local restaurants. And the bartender there is a guy that we're sort of becoming regulars at this place, almost to the point of us being able to walk in and them going the usual, which I love that about your drink order and your food order. So we're really close to that, but it's a local spot. And he's just lamenting of what's going on right now, because these restaurants went from 50% capacity allowed to 100% capacity allowed, and they have no staff. They're just like getting killed on staff. They have nobody, because so many people are collecting unemployment checks still that they can't get people to come back to work. So they're working crazy hours trying to keep these places afloat that are now allowed to have full capacity again. So I'm just wondering if you guys have noticed at any of your favorite restaurants, maybe the ones that aren't mom and pops, but like, have you noticed that it's like there's a lot of delays, or orders are messed up, or it seems like they have a really high turnover right now because it's just hard to get them staffed?
Go ahead, Kendall.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to my wife about this today, that I feel like when COVID first hit, and I had never used DoorDash or anything like it before, and I feel like the food was better at the beginning of COVID than it is now coming out of COVID. And or that the orders are more accurate. So and we had been ordering DoorDash so often that we've cut ourselves back. So now it's like one lunch a week and one dinner a week is what we're allowing ourselves to do. And today, because I was sick, I decided it was DoorDash day for lunch. And we got Wendy's, and they were just, it's not like they forgot an entire sandwich, although it would have been better if they had, because there were so many little things that they were forgetting. Like the honey mustard for the chicken nuggets for my daughter. That one's expected. It's impossible to get someone paid on minimum wage to remember dipping sauce. I'm convinced. They had put onions on a kid's meal burger, which don't even come on a kid's meal burger. So that was weird. They were missing. So I got 3 kids meals. This was kind of like a daddy sick, I'm thanking you for cleaning up the house kind of thing. 2 out of 3 kids meals, no toy.
Oh man, what is wrong with the world?
Yeah. And so like I'm going on a DoorDash and I'm like complaining about all the things, and the way it works in DoorDash is you have to do them all individually. And because I had like the same problem multiple times, I couldn't even like I could even make a complaint about all of them because it doesn't let you do it that way. So, I mean, I got some credits back, but unfortunately, like that lately, like that hasn't been a rare experience.
Yeah.
And
I feel
I don't
bad
know.
for these places.
I do too. And so that's what I kind of chalk it up to, is that they're literally hiring just whoever they can at this point. And even at that, they're not in a, unfortunately, they're not in an economic strategic position to where there's even all that many people available that want to work there. And so they're, I believe that that's the problem. They're short staffed, and there's probably a lot of the people who are working there who are new and undertrained. And I think that's the world we live in currently.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple episodes back the whole thing with going to a place and them. I was thinking they were going to forget my straw, so I asked for the straw, and they're like, "You'll get it," which is its own thing. But okay. But on top of that, my whole point of saying that was this is an industry that feels kind of beat up right now, and so the assumption is I'm just trying to ask for what I need to try to make your life easier instead of hoping that they'll remember everything. And then when they don't, act outraged, so it's like hey, I think the only thing I need is a straw, was me trying to help. But with that said, so my wife and I just went for the first time in a very long time. We went to J. Alexander's. We went not just to there, but to any restaurant, but that's where we picked. And we sat out on the patio. They were like super well staffed, and it was like lunch. It wasn't even like their prime time. And actually, we commented how fantastic the service was. There was a bunch of people in there working. So I don't know if it's because of the nature of the restaurant we went to was a little higher end. Maybe they pay a little better, but I would assume that a lot of those people are making the same serving minimum wage that a lot of other places are. But they were super well staffed and really good. Honestly, one of the better times I've ever had service, just them checking on things and refilling drinks. And so I don't know if it maybe there's a chance that some of the nicer restaurants are the ones that maybe don't seem nicer, but happen to pay more, have less issues right now. And then, we're all going to a lot of places that probably pay minimum wage, more regularly, like fast food joints or whatever. Maybe those, it's a little harder to attract people, but it's funny that you say that, because we literally just had that experience. And I was like, that was like, they did fantastic. There was plenty of help.
There's hope.
So there is hope. I'm sure that's not true everywhere, but that was certainly our experience for the first nice meal out that we've done in a long time. So
how was your dish? How was what you ordered, the food?
Oh man. So I got, I got sushi. I think was supposed to be an entree. That was my appetizer. And then I got crab cakes, which were awesome.
Nice.
Nice, yeah.
Not in the part of the country that can get seafood, but this was like big lumps in these crab cakes, which were awesome. That's not what they're known for, or this part of the country, but I was super happy with my choice. So my wife got steak and she got something else for an appetizer, and so it was good. Then we went to a different local place for cheesecake, and
nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. But yeah, so props to them for hosting us for what was a fantastic meal.
Speaking of exquisite dishes, have you guys had any cicada experiences with Brood X? We talked about it a few episodes back.
Brood X has been the biggest disappointment in my life.
Wow.
No, there's none in your area?
I have heard exactly one cicada this whole time. Exactly.
This is their Super Bowl.
I know. I know. I have friends who have billions of them and around them. They're not in Gahanna, Ohio. They're not here.
Weird.
Except for one. There was exactly one. It was in a tree that I'm taller than. So it was lost. in the parking lot of a school that they just built. So this tree has not been there for the past 17 years or 30 years. This tree has been there for the past 30 days, and it had a cicada in it.
How
Out
about
of
you?
curiosity.
How about you,
Well-
Dylan?
Well, let me ask Kendall, out of curiosity, what was at the top of your disappointment list before this?
DoorDash.
Oh. I thought you were going to say your local Pizza Hut.
No. That score's been settled. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, the whole business is gone.
Yeah.
No, we've got none near us.
Okay, so we were driving back from Tennessee. I had 0 cicada experiences up till this point. We're in Florence, which is just south of Cincinnati in Kentucky. And as we're coming up I-75 north to Florence, I hear a sound that at first I thought something was going on with our brakes or our vehicle. It was this like pulsating loud sound. And I'm like, what the heck? Traffic started to get a little bad there. I roll my windows down when I realize it's Brood X.
Yeah.
It is the cicadas. It was so loud that with my windows down, my 3 children on devices, and us playing music and talking, I heard the cicadas through the car windows. Then once we get back up to speed on the highway, our vehicle starts getting pelted with cicadas. Boom. And it was like boom, 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 boom. And then you look to the shoulder in the median, and there's just cicada carcasses lining the highway. And then north of Cincinnati, it kind of lightened up. And then right when we were on the south side of Columbus, it happened again. Another, it got loud again. We were hitting a bunch of them, and there were just bug carcasses all over the road. But just a few miles north here in Sunbury, nothing.
Yeah.
A few maybe in some trees, like we can hear them at night, but it's not a large cluster.
Yeah, like it's hyper regional. Like I know people in Sunbury who do have quite a few.
Yeah.
But it just depends on where you are, man.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I was hoping to collect some and make a dish.
I was going to say, did you scoop any off the windshield and cook them up?
I thought we had to get them when they were nymphs.
You don't have to, but that's the preference.
That's the preference.
Is that like your steak medium rare is the chef's preference?
Best if used by kind of
best if used by.
Best if used before wings.
Got it. Oh man. I just thought that was interesting. I was curious to see what you guys had experienced.
Yeah. Best if used by. Hey, did you guys know that blue cheese can go bad? That's pretty funny, huh? I encountered some today. That's all.
Some bad blue cheese?
Blue cheese that had gone bad. Yep.
What does it smell like? Blue cheese?
But worse.
Oh man.
No, I cut it open and there's like wet brown inside.
Ew, that's a great place to end the episode.
I looked it up and that was bad news. It had gone bad.
Anytime you experience wet brown, it's a good time to stop whatever you're doing.
That's exactly. So that's what I did. I did not eat the wet brown.
Yeah, never eat wet brown. Fun times.
Anything else, guys?
I'm good if you're good.
Well, speaking of wet and brown, when you got that nice wet brown beard that needs some beard oil, make sure to head over to artiusman, artiusman.com. Use promo code the middle and you'll get 25% off your first order, which is a ridiculously good discount. And on top of that, they've got beards and balms and oils and lotions and shampoos and conditioners and man bags and all kinds of neat stuff, including these super cool hats if you're on YouTube watching. So again, head over to artiusman, artiusman.com. Use promo code the middle. Load up your cart with as much stuff as you can put on your credit card. Use that promo code and you'll save a boatload.
Hey, let's have a fun call to action for our listeners this week. What do we want to hear from them? We got voicemails, we got emails. You can text and call us now. What do we want? What do we want?
Honestly, if there was anything that I could ask, because so many of our regular listeners have done so many awesome things for us already. At this point, what I would love more than anything else is if you hear an episode or you see an episode that you think somebody would enjoy, could you do us a favor and recommend our show?
Oh,
If you think
man.
we're funny and you know people that have a similar sense of humor to us or to you, send the link to our show to somebody that you know. You can send it from Pandora or from iHeartRadio, from Amazon Music, from Spotify, from Apple Podcasts. You can send them the YouTube link, or you can copy and paste our Linktree link on any of our social media profiles and let them pick where they want to listen. But ultimately, the best thing that anyone can do for us at this point is just recommend our show. Word of mouth goes a super long way. So when you love a particular episode, or if you think you know somebody who would enjoy our show, we would really appreciate it if you just gave us a recommendation.
That's a terrific point, Dylan. You know, I heard from a listener just today. They said, I was just listening to your episode where you, Corey, were describing how your children don't like to look down at the ground when riding on your motorcycle. And so they don't want to ride with you. And then Dylan follows that up with, that's highly generational, because I imagine generations before you would have said, you know what, I didn't like looking down over Nazi Germany from a bomber. And they said they were cracking up for minutes on end. It would be great if that person and others, if there's a specific episode that made you laugh or you really enjoyed, maybe you got a lot from hearing Patrick Metal talk about mental health last month, share it with a friend. That really helps us, as Dylan said. So that's the call to action this week. Tell a friend about us at From the Mid Pod everywhere. We appreciate you. Dylan, take us out.
And on top of that, don't just think about that for future episodes. If you know there's one in the past, like the Patrick Metal one or Kellen Erskine, or plenty of our other episodes in the past, you can do it with older episodes, just like the new ones. With that, we are done. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into this episode of From the Middle. Join us next week.
Auf Wiedersehen.